Crispin George is my name. I am a lecturer at the University of Sierra Leone and also a doctoral candidate at the Atlantic International University, United States of America. The topic for this presentation is how organizational structures affect project outcomes. The presentation will take this format. We'll run through the introduction. We'll also look at some of the guidelines in choosing organizational structure. We'll look at the types of organizational structures. We'll look at the pros and cons of project organizational structures. We'll look at the Project Management Office, the PMO. And then we'll look at how organizational structures affect project outcomes. And then we briefly look at the conclusion. Organizational structure is very important in the implementation of the projects. By that I mean having the right organizational structure is central to the success of a particular project. Most organizations, they are more interested in adopting organizational structure that is workable and able to stand the test of times. So organizations are actually looking out for a structure that is robust enough. But as organizations, small organizations, to a greater extent, may not too focus on setting up such structures. But as the organization grows, it captures new markets, it increases its customer base, creates a lot of partnership, creates a lot of connections. The need for organizational structure is always there. So having the proper or the correct structure will actually support the strategic agenda of that particular organization. And the selection process, selecting an organizational structure, is a key responsibility of management. Selecting the correct organizational structure for a project is a critical step towards achieving project success, and as such should be treated with utmost seriousness. Every organization that is implementing a particular project is looking out for what we call a project success. So in order for that organization to achieve project success, having the correct organizational structure is central to that particular dream. Now let's run through some of the guidelines, the guiding principles that we must follow in selecting a most appropriate organizational structure for a project. 1. Understanding the strategic goal of the parent organization, together with the primary objective of initiating the project. It is necessary for us to know that management can use the project as a tool to achieve that goal. Establishing that fact will significantly help management in choosing the right organizational structure for every project undertaken by the parent organizations. Projects are initiated by parent organizations for a number of reasons, including introducing new product line into the market, gaining competitive advantage over rivals, differentiation of products to make it distinct, natural disasters. These are all some of the reasons why organizations are into projects. So understanding the strategic goal is very much important in choosing the appropriate structure. Establishing the functional unit in the parent organization that has a particular interest in the potential project. Now, every organization has different units. You can have the finance unit, you have the operational unit, you have the marketing unit, you have the IT unit, different units or different departments. So in choosing the right organizational structure, you should be able to have a particular unit. You should be able to allocate that particular project to the unit that will best supervise that project. That is what I mean by establishing the functional unit in the parent organization that has particular interest in the potential project. The nature of the potential project, the nature of the project also is an important aspect, or is an important factor in selecting organizational structure. We'll also look at the detailed breakdown of project tasks and the assignment of such tasks to project staff. This will give an idea of the pending work and the specialist required to perform that work. In a situation where the parent organization lacks the personnel capacity, then it becomes a prime factor in influencing the organizational structure for such projects. And of course, benefits and challenges also is another important thing that should be considered in selecting organizational structure. What are some of the benefits? What are the challenges this project will bring to the organization? Types of project organizational structure. Basically, we have these 4 types. We have what we call the functional structure, projectile structure. This is also called the project-oriented structure. We have the matrix structure, and we have the mixed structure. Now, let's take each of these types and begin to look at their advantages and disadvantages. Now, the functional structure is a situation where you have a functional unit of the parent organization overseeing the particular project. So in this particular case here, now you have the functional manager who is the head of that functional unit. The functional manager is the one in charge. Even though you have the project manager, but then the project manager works under the authority of the functional manager because the project is being supervised by the functional unit. So now when it comes to making critical project decisions, the functional manager has more say than the project manager. Now let's look at what are some of the advantages of this kind of arrangement. Now, one of the advantages, the functional unit now serves as the reservoir for the project. What do I mean by the functional unit serves as the reservoir for this kind of project? This helps the project to tap into the organizational resources such as the human capacity, equipment, and tools to enhance project implementation. So, for instance, these projects can easily tap into the resources of that particular functional unit. So it becomes easy for the project. The project identifies with the organizational strategies of the parent organization. Now, every organization has its own strategy, has its norms, has its principles, has its own standards. Now, once a project is being overseen, a project is being supervised by a functional unit, that particular project will be forced, or that project manager will be forced to identify itself with the strategy. The project manager will not deviate from the strategy of that parent organization. Rather, the project manager, since the project manager is under the authority of the functional manager, the project manager will definitely identify itself with the organizational strategy. The functional manager does the lobbying at senior management level for project resources. So here, because this project is under the domain of the functional manager, the functional manager will do more of the lobbying. The functional manager will be the one advocating to management on behalf of the project, instead of the project manager doing that advocacy. What are some of the disadvantages? Assigned staff tend to show loyalty to the functional unit as opposed to the project. Yes, because most of the staffs are coming from the functional unit. So they are coming from the functional unit, being assigned to the project. So their loyalty is more to the functional unit because the project will end one day and then they will have to go back to the functional unit. That is one of the challenges in making swift project decisions. It's difficult when it comes to making swift project decisions because decision does not completely lie in the hands of the project manager, because the project manager is working under the authority of the functional manager. Before he or she makes that decision, the project manager must liaise with the functional manager for a decision to be made. So it becomes a challenge for you to respond to your client swiftly. There is an increased tendency for conflict situation. Yes, there is an increased tendency because here you have the project manager, you have the functional manager, especially in cases where the project manager disagrees with what the functional manager is saying. Conflict situation might always arise. In this structure, the functional unit is of high priority than the project. Yes, because the functional manager who is in charge is more loyal to its unit than the project. You see, so as far as whenever there is that clash between the unit and the project, priority goes to that of the functional unit. The project-oriented structure, yeah, the line that connects this structure to that of the parent organization is a thin one. Yeah, the project manager is given autonomy. Instead of the functional manager being the boss, now the project is given entirely to the project manager. So project decisions are taken by the project manager. So the functional manager has little or no say in this type of arrangement. All major decisions, all critical decisions are taken by the project manager. Now let's look at some of the advantages. The project manager has absolute control over the project. Yes, that is true. Easy to make swift project decisions. Yes, because the project manager is not working under the authority of that functional manager. All project decisions are taken by the project manager. Simple and flexible structure to understand. Yes, the structure is simple and flexible with respect to the project, because in this particular structure, the project is the focus. What are some of the disadvantages? Difficult to adopt this structure when the organization is implementing several projects. Yes, most organizations, you can have several projects that are ongoing, and because you have several projects that are ongoing, if the organization decide to use this structure, then it means it becomes difficult when it comes to the allocation of resources and every other thing. In most cases, staffs are terminated when the project ends. Yes, yeah, because the project is outside the functional unit. It's outside the domain of the functional unit. Once the project ends, that signals the termination of this particular staff as compared to the functional unit. The functional units, the functional structure, what normally happens, even after the project ends, these staff can always come back to the functional unit because these staffs were part of the functional unit. They were just assigned to that project. But in this particular case, these are staffs recruited by the project manager, and when the project ends, that's the end of their contract. Easy for the project to deviate from parent organizational norms. Yes, because there is a thin line linking the project to that of the parent organization. So most of the decisions, most of the things that are being done are as a result of the project manager's view or the project manager's action. The matrix structure now, this one is like a fine balance between the two extremes, between the functional and the projectized. Yeah, you have some scholars normally refer to this as the hybrid structure, attempting to blend the strength of both structures to make the organization robust enough to cope with challenging projects. What are some of the advantages? Enables the parent organization to keep most of these experts even when there is no project. Now, you have these experts that are working on the project. But because this particular structure is like a fine balance, when the project ends, you can always bring these experts again into the functional unit. Whereas in the projectize now, when the project ends, you will have to lay off these particular experts. So one of the advantages of this matrix structure is the fact that you are able to keep most of these experts, because there is always that fine balance between the functional unit and the project. Project cost reduction. Yes, cost is reduced here because there are certain resources the project needs. You can always come to the functional unit for those resources instead of you go out there to outsource. Staffs are relatively stable. Yes, there is stability because staffs know that even after the project ends, they can always come back to the functional unit. So there is job security. Enable staff growth. Yes, here staff in the functional unit can always come to the project at least to sharpen their project management skills, to sharpen their management skills, and they can always go. There is always that back and forth from the functional unit to the project, and that is very good for staff growth. One of the major disadvantages is the two-boss scenario. You have the functional manager, you have the project manager. Delay in decision-making process because you have this two-boss scenario. There is always a recipe for project tensions and conflict. In the mixed form now, this form of organizational structure creates the platform for both fully functionalized and pure projectized structure to cohabit. It is similar to the matrix structure, although it is characteristically used in small and extremely short duration projects. That is the key. Characteristically used in small and extremely short duration projects. It shares most of the advantages of the matrix structure, including sharing of resources and everything. There is always a tendency for this structure to transform itself to the matrix structure when the project exceeds its duration. So there is a thin line differentiating this mixed organizational structure and that of the matrix. We have what we call the project management office. The project management office, of course, is very, very important. This office is geared towards advancing and maintaining project management principles and practices. Some of the reasons here: this office links the parent organization to the project. It serves as a repository where project data are kept. It ensures compliance very much to project management principles, provides training, coaching, mentoring of project staff. Of course, it supports projects. And another thing that is very much important also, when the correct organizational structure is selected, the following project outcomes are easy management of the project, adequate management of organizational resources, there is project management procedures and standards are followed, and organizational goals and strategies are easily achieved, and there is career advancement. As I explained earlier, staff can move back and forth between the functional and the project. It gives the organization the competitive edge over its rivals. Thanks for